I've seen some online discussions where this book has got an argument going between is it sci-fi or is it horror? Now, I can see both ends of this because it's Michael Crichton. It's going to have science in it. So you always got your science fiction. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit of a twist to it. But then I'm scared shitless of the ocean, so there's a little bit of horror in there for me. But is it going to be for you? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, bookworms and Crichton critters? Mike back to talk a little more Michael Crichton today as we were rolling along through the great reread. This was a review I was supposed to do last month, but I decided to push it ahead to Sci-Fi September since it definitely does fall into the sci-fi genre, in my opinion, and we will talk about why. This is the sixth book under his own name. This is 1987's Sphere. And yes, guys, the last one out of a collection. After this, I have all of the actual singular releases of it. And I'll dig those up someday. Just right now, it was just like, some of those are quite expensive. I don't know if that's something I want to do right now. But you know what? The story's the same in a collection or not. It's just kind of a book collecting problem. But guys, took a little bit of break there, didn't he? Between Congo and Sphere, a 7-year break. I think it's because during that time, he was kind of getting more involved with Hollywood. He wrote and directed The Looker and Runaway during that time. He was doing quite well. So it was like, hey, why do I need to go back to books? But thankfully for us, he did, because this is right around the time when the guy became a can't-miss author. And this one really, with this book here, he actually started writing this in 1967, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. That's before Andromeda Strain. Speaking of Andromeda Strain, he wanted to make it kind of like a companion, not exactly a sequel, but a companion piece to Andromeda Strain, but he ended up shelving it and saying he really didn't know where he was going with it, so he came back to it later. So that's how this actually kind of came about. Now, this was number 3 on my top 10 Michael Crichton novels, and this was a reread for me, guys. And going off my memory, this was number 3. So the question is, did it hold up on a reread, or was this nostalgia? Now we're going to discuss it. If it held up, let's begin, like usual, guys, with what is this book about? In the middle of the South Pacific, 1,000 feet below the surface of the water, a huge vessel is discovered resting on the ocean floor. It is a spaceship of phenomenal dimensions, apparently undamaged by its fall from the sky. 5 scientists are selected to explore the vessel and hopefully make first contact. Inside, they find a mysterious spherical object that almost seems to call to them. But even more mysterious, guys, is what is inside. That takes us to 1987, Michael Crichton's Sphere. Now, there's going to be a lot of good, guys, on this book, because this is one of my favorite Crichton novels. My second favorite author of all time. But let's talk about what makes it good or bad. Crichton's character work in this has got to be my favorite, because it's night and day between this and the first 5 books. Now, I don't know if being so much time in Hollywood working on screenplays and stuff, if this helped him, because the one big criticism of his books, the early half and kind of the latter half, even though I disagree with it in the latter half, was his character work. And I brought up in each of those reviews, yeah, there is some character work problems for sure. As someone who prefers characters first in their stories, yeah, it kind of was almost a weak point of some of the stories. He had great ideas and he had a great plot, but the characters are always kind of like, you really didn't really care too much about their fate. At least I didn't. I mean, I kind of started to get there with Congo, but even between Congo and this, night and day difference. Each one of these characters feels differentiated. Norman, Harry, Beth, Barnes, Arthur, even Fielding, they all feel really differentiated. They all have unique character traits. You can kind of feel what each character is going through, based off of their backstory. He does kind of give you some of those things. And a lot of these things you think, oh, of course you got to give the character some backstory. Guys, these are 300-page books. These aren't big, huge fantasy bricks. What he was able to do with these main characters in such a short time is actually quite impressive. And it was even better. Like I said, in my memory, I didn't have a ton of memory outside of like Norman and Beth. I didn't have like a huge memory of a lot of these characters. But going through it this time, like, man, each of these characters really has their own thing going on. It's a very, very good job done by him. I mean, even as something as simple as like some of the Navy officers on this vessel, they even have like some things that really define them, and it's just very, very well done. I definitely think is a very, very big improvement between the 2 books. Before, like I said, the first 5 books and this, I think with this one, the best thing for me is like that sense of dread. I'm already, like I said, I'm kind of already freaked out about, not kind of, I am freaked out about the ocean. It's not a you can't swim thing. It's not afraid of sharks thing. It's just something about open space. It's called thalassophobia. Look it up. So anytime you got your book setting already taking place below the surface level of the ocean, I'm already kind of freaked out. And then you're going to add an alien vessel to it of unknown origin, then obviously it's going to be very, very creepy. So I think that, that can be something that can get the argument going between is this horror, is this sci-fi. Like I said, there are some kind of creepy things that happen below, but it's Michael Crichton, guys. It's very much going to be a science fiction book, I think. But then you get into the things like the dread and the paranoia and stuff like that. You can see how those elements are kind of brought forth. But really what that is seeing how these characters are affected. Not only are they, detached from the real world because they're down, very, very far below the surface. I don't remember the exact amount of meters or miles or any of that stuff, guys. Very, very far down in the Pacific Ocean. So, you already got kind of that sense of solitude, the being detached from the real world, and then they're kind of paranoid about the events that are going on here. They start suspecting each other and stuff. We don't know what's going to happen. Then there's like this big storm up above the surface level, so they might be disconnected from the real world. It's all the stuff you expect from a Crichton story where, hey, look, scientific discovery. Hey, look, big-ass problem. Not everyone's going to survive. Yes, if you want to say if there's anything formulaic about a Crichton novel, that would be it. But I think that's a very, very big ocean there. See what I did there? But, claustrophobia, paranoia, all of those things really, really play into the plot well here. And I think Crichton having multiple scientists in a room kind of sparring with one another, to me, this has to be him placing conversations he's had in real life, kind of hanging out with some of his super smart MIT buddies, kind of like that, hanging out with those kind of guys and just talking about science, kind of like, how me and some guys would get together and talk about sports. This is probably the kind of stuff him and his friends talk about. And talking about sports, he actually uses a really good metaphor here. The science, guys. It's a Michael Crichton novel, so we're going to talk about the science. And what I continue to say is I love the way he is able to put things into layman's terms for people without a PhD in science or physics to understand, this being me and probably you, most likely. But with this one, his big science this go-around is space-time compression and the curvature of space. Simple stuff, right? Well, no, not really. But you know what he does? He makes it simple. And he does it by using baseball as a metaphor. And it makes perfect sense the way he does it. The man should have been a school teacher as well, but I'm glad he was an author. This guy really, really just broke it down to a way that it makes sense to you. And he continues to do that. He is 6 for 6 now in taking major science. Well, I don't know. I don't really think that there was a lot of science in The Great Train Robbery. But okay, every book that is science-based so far, he has broken down a major theme of science, a major subject rather, and made it really, really understandable for the reader. And I appreciate that he continues to do that. I think the biggest thing in this one, though, is the mystery guy. What is the sphere? What does it do? What's inside? What happens if it opens? All these things, etc., etc. You've got all these big questions about the sphere. You got all these big questions about the ship. All kinds of questions. And every time you think, I know what's going to happen next, nope. Nope, he flips the script on you completely. And I don't think that this book is predictable at all. And I think the fact that people are still arguing about this ending all these years later prove that it is not predictable. But we'll get to that here in a second. But it's just, guys, it's just so fast-paced. I mean, I think it's like 30 pages into this. Boom, you're already in the water. You're heading down to the vessel. He doesn't waste any time. He does introduce these characters well, but he doesn't just do info dump right at the beginning with all these characters. He really does introduce them, let you get to know them as the story goes along, as a group of strangers would do. And I love that kind of character development. Anytime you got a group of characters like that and you have them interacting with each other, of course you're not going to be best friends right away, but they learn to trust each other, or in this case, maybe they learn not to trust each other. I don't know. You'll have to read and find out. But guys, the ending, like I said, is still something that is argued about amongst the Crichton fandom today. There are still people, if you go into like a science fiction, I don't know, Reddit, I don't do Reddit, something like that, but you can find these places where people still argue about this stuff, and you will see people have like 3,000 word thesis about what the ending of this is, and then someone will come back with the exact opposite, and you sit there and you look at it and you're like, I can see it both ways. So very much, I won't say it's ambiguous as much as it is kind of leaves it up to your interpretation. And as far as I know, Crichton never really gave a solid answer on this before he sadly left us. I don't know, but I know I have my opinion. So drop on the Discord and then talk in the spoiler section maybe if you want to talk about this, because I have my opinions about this ending. But it is very good, and like I said, guys, in my top 10 video, it's something when I read it, I was 15 trying to wrap my head around. I put it on there the same levels as like God Emperor of Dune on like blowing my mind on holy hell, I don't know. I think this. Wait, no, I think this. No, I think that. And just kind of arguing with myself, like Gollum or something in Two Towers. That's kind of how I felt about it. But there are some bad things, guys, here, and they're very minimal, though. Some will argue that the characters are not likable. With me, I think with Crichton's character work, I don't think he ever uses those typical, kind of tropes, I guess you call it, character tropes. He's not ever going to write a good guy and a bad guy kind of character. He has just real life kind of people. Here you're dealing with scientists. I don't know, there's a lot of scientists out there that are, you hang around for a while and you're just like, what a super sexy attitude. It's just scientists. They're just the everyman. I mean, not the everyman, because I guess not every man's really good at science, are they? But you know what I mean? It's just like the characters, they aren't incredibly chivalrous, so they aren't incredibly sleazy. I don't know. They're just people. And I think that's what I always like about it. But there are some people who are like, I want to root for my characters, and maybe you'll root for these, maybe you won't. I don't know. And then there's the whole thing with the sphere, what it is, what it does. It might disappoint some people when they find out exactly what's going on. I thought it was fascinating, obviously. Being such a fan that I am and loving this book so much, I really, really was hooked by it. There's some people who have said, I'm just kind of expecting something else. I don't know what you were expecting, but I say go into it with your expectations checked on that. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you find out. But let's go ahead, guys, and move into why you should read it. Look, it's Crichton. You should read it. And this is one of his best. It's my second favorite author of all time. And I'm saying this is one of his best books. I definitely think, and this isn't just me, guys. This is universally. I don't think you'll find a single Crichton fan that won't say this is a top 5 Crichton book for them. So it's really, really excellent. I don't really know another way to say, hey, you should read this because it's excellent. But there it is. I mean, sci-fi, mystery, thriller. It's going to kind of keep you guessing until the very, very end. And even then, you're probably going to end up wrong. And then the end will be having you pondering for weeks, months, maybe years. This is a story that will stick with you. A lot of these one-offs, some people say, it was a really good book, but you know what? 5 minutes after I finished it, I wasn't thinking about it anymore. You'll be thinking about this one. It'll stick in your head for a while. It's stuck in mine for 20-something years here. I can never stop thinking about this book because this ending and just the whole themes presented in it are really, really make me think about like the greater sense of mankind kind of thing. So you'll see if you do read it. Guys, like some final thoughts here. In my top 10 video, I had this at number 3. Now, on this reread, I think I would move it ahead of Andromeda Strain for number 2. I think it would move up to number 2 here if I was doing that list over again. I don't know. We might see. I'm not done with this reread. But yeah, I liked it even better this time around than I did as a teenager. And I think it's because it's kind of like what I said with my King reread, is that a lot of things I really liked of King when I was a teenager, and I'm reading them now, I'm relating more as an adult who's gone through some of these struggles that adults go through that teenagers haven't experienced yet. And like some of the things that like Beth has went through is stuff I can be like, wow, I can really see a different side of her character than I could as a teenage boy. It was different things like that. So I loved it, and I think you will too. Cranks the tension and dread to 11, and it never really lets go. I love it. It's very much I won't say it's quite as horrific, but it's very much John Carpenter's The Thing, underwater, with the sense of paranoia, the sense of suspecting everyone, that kind of thing. I think that you're going to find plenty to like here, and that leads us, guys, into the adaptation. Wow, okay. This is a movie that I try not to laugh about it. It's a movie, I just rewatched it last night with my wife. She thought it was fine. Me as a reader was just like, and we'll talk about it here. I think it's a movie that should have succeeded on paper. I mean, it had a stellar cast. It had an amazing story to go off of. It had an Oscar-winning director. It had a pretty big budget. $80 million in 1998 was a pretty decent budget for a movie like this. This is a movie that should have succeeded in every way, and it seemed like it failed in just about every way. And it's really wild to say that, because I think in most cases, like go back and look at Congo, what I said about Congo, it's like, did you guys read the book at all? I mean, with this, I think it's mostly faithful to the story for the most part. But I was never bored reading the book like I am bored for 98% of this movie. How could you make a story like this so boring? I don't understand it. And again, this cast is incredible. And it seems like they're all just there for a paycheck. I cannot believe that this director was not able to get more out of them, or if they were even trying. If everybody was just like, I don't know. I guess we're here. Let's just go ahead and do it. I think they try to ramp up the horror a little bit more. I want to say this was around the same time as Event Horizon had real success with that. And I think they kind of wanted to do that, but instead of space, do it underwater. They were kind of going for Event Horizon in the water. If I've got the years mixed up, maybe that's wrong. If Event Horizon came after this, I don't know. That's just kind of what the feeling I got watching it last night. I was like, didn't Event Horizon do this, but successfully? But I get why they tried to make it more horrific. What I said in... or I actually haven't said it because I haven't reviewed it yet, but when I was reading Jurassic Park, I was saying, this was very horrific. I could see if they wanted to make this a horror movie. And James Cameron, who actually wanted to make Jurassic Park, wanted to make that a horror movie. It was Steven Spielberg who said, who ultimately did get the opportunity to make it, and said he wanted to make it more family friendly. So it would have been a very, very different movie. So I can see the horror elements here if someone wanted to make it that way. I just don't think it really landed. And like I said, the actors just didn't seem like they wanted to be there. And just an incredible cast. It's just amazing that this didn't work out. But look, this was a post-Jurassic Park movie world here. And this was a time when all the studios were trying to acquire Crichton's rights and adapt it and get it out as fast as possible. They wanted a chance to make, kind of capitalize off the success of Jurassic Park. It's only 5 years after Jurassic Park. You set the world on fire, right? So I think what they forgot to realize with that was, with Jurassic Park, you had Steven Spielberg, one of the best directors of all time, and you had Michael Crichton write the screenplay for that. Neither of those happened here. And I think that's where a lot of these Crichton adaptations failed. They tried to rush them out. They didn't put the care that was needed to put in. A lot like I said with Stephen King. They're always like, let's just get it out there. Name recognition alone is going to put butts in seats. And then they don't understand why it failed. Look, this is a big, fat do not recommend for me. And it's amazing because, like I said, usually I'm complaining that it isn't faithful. This is pretty faithful. I just think it could have been probably trimmed down by about 30 minutes and just made the pacing a little faster. And if the actors had given a shit, I think it probably could have been pretty good. I didn't think that look, the special effects look a little dated for 1998. Sure, that's going to happen sometimes. But, I didn't think they were awful. And the changes that they made were minimal. I didn't think they were huge. Like most Crichton adaptations have a ton of changes. But I don't know, guys. It just feels like a missed opportunity. I've heard that HBO is trying to remake this. They do have the rights for it. There's a story about a year ago came out. Said they were going to try to remake it on HBO. They've already been invested in Crichton's works with Westworld, and say what you want about that. But this is, I believe it is the showrunner who does Westworld, or started Westworld at least, or wrote for Westworld. Something is going to be the showrunner for it. So I don't know if they want to do this like a limited series or want to make this like a seasons thing. I don't think that there's enough story here. It would be really weird if they made this like an ongoing series, or if it's just going to be like an HBO movie. I think HBO should get back to doing that. You got your main streaming competitors now doing direct to their streaming service films. I think this should be a film contained within like 2 hours. It's a story you can tell in 2 hours. Otherwise, as you can see with this 1998 adaptation, it can get really, really slow in plotting if you don't keep it as fast-paced as Mr. Crichton did. So guys, that was Sphere by Michael Crichton. Have you read it? What did you think? Did you like it as much as I did? Let's talk about it in the comments, guys, and I will talk to you there.